Hello everyone and good morning to you. A special thanks to BCCIE and to Elizabeth Bryn for offering me this opportunity to speak with you today at the Morning Coffee Series. I'm particularly excited to connect with you, my colleagues in Western Canada, because it's always interesting to me to see how our perspectives, the issues we see, the approaches we take get defined by the context that surrounds us. So thank you again, BCCIE, and to Elizabeth for this opportunity. My name is Roopa Trilokekar. I'm a professor in the Faculty of Education at York University. Before being an academic, I was being a practitioner in the field for several years. And my interests, therefore, are always in terms of how research can inform policy and practice, and how policy and practice in turn can inform research questions today and in the future. Before I begin sharing what I would like to today, I wanted to share with you my coffee mug. It's not really a coffee mug, if you can see. It is a mug that I did get at a Christmas market in Nuremberg in Germany, where I was first introduced to glühwein. It was a very fun holiday. I highly recommend spending a Christmas visiting all the Christmas markets in Europe. So this is my mug because I was thinking of this mug as we're approaching the holiday season. And instead of hot glühwein, I'm having hot water this morning. So cheers to you as we begin coming close to our holiday season. I want to share a really exciting initiative I was part of this summer, but I want to put it in context of a broader policy issue in Canada. Lisa Brunner at UBC, that some of you might be aware of, is a scholar, and she has come up with a term called edugration. Edugration is really the nexus of education and immigration policy. And in Canada, as in Australia and some other countries, we have brought these two policies together. And what that means is we look now on international students as our prospective immigrants, as our ideal immigrants. And while there's good recognition of this policy, and we're really in the thick of it, basically, I don't think we have really understood, digested, considered the implications of this policy in terms of various factors, how it impacts other policy sectors, how it impacts our relationships between one another, between different policy actors, including international students. What kinds of new research questions are to be considered, and how it perhaps complicates relationships, roles, and responsibilities. Without delving into it too much further, all I'd like to say is that some of the media articles, if you see, and I'm giving you two examples only, I know a couple of, maybe a year ago, Walrus came up with a very interesting article, an important article called The Shadowy Business of International Education. CBC has come up and aired The Fifth Estate very recently. These are just two, but there are many, many media articles such as these, which highlight the kinds of contexts and problems that have been produced for international students, their experiences, the kind of unethical practices all around in our communities, the concern we should have about what's going on. And I would say a lot of these issues are very related to education, to these two policy sectors coming together and us not really paying attention to the kind of implications, as I suggested before, that occur when you bring these policies together. As a response to some of these articles, there's been lots of finger pointing. Who is responsible? Who has to take responsibilities for international students? A lot of folks think it's the post-secondary sector. Others think it's the recruiters, it's the private colleges, all kinds of finger pointing there. We're not the first jurisdictions to go through this experience. Australia did too. They came out with a set of very regulatory mechanisms on the part of the government in order to protect their student consumers. Is that the right solution? Is that the best way forward? maybe, maybe not, but I want to share with you a very interesting initiative. The city of Brampton, here in the Peel region, in Ontario, faced similar crises, I would say. They had lots of concerns, lots of bad media publicity, lots of concerns within the community itself about hosting international students. And the two things that I would bring to your attention that are very important in this context is the city of Brampton, along with Sheridan College, which was one of the post-secondary institutions that got caught up in this discourse about who is responsible. They decided, well, we're going to own these problems. We're going to take these issues front on, and we're going to change the tide. We're going to acknowledge, make space to discuss these issues, come up with a solution, so much so that we're going to actually now develop initiatives and plans that will make us the best practice leader in international student experiences in Canada. That was pretty bold and important and, visionary, I would say. The second component, they said, was we're going to look at the student experience, not in just terms of enhancing it or improving our reputation, but we're going to look at measures of safety. We're going to look at measures of well-being, and perhaps most importantly, measures of inclusion of international students within the full community, not just one or two sectors, not just the post-secondary, but the full community, the city of Brampton. So in the fall of 2022, the city of Brampton and Sheridan brought together several interested and committed folks in the community. And I thought it was very interesting that Sheridan definitely was in a leadership role, but took the back seat and let community organizations, interested members within the community take the step forward in terms of moving forward this discussion, this initiative. So it was called the Roundtable on International Student Experience in Brampton. It was co-chaired by the fire chief of Brampton, the city of Brampton, and a CEO of one of the very large community organizations. And they had many other representatives on the roundtable: the Punjabi Community Health Services, the councillor in the city of Brampton, the commissioner, region of Peel, a medical officer, people from the hospital, local hospital, the trade, Brampton Board of Trade, World Sikh organizations, student organizations. So many different representatives that came together on this roundtable. And as I said, Sheridan was smart. They provided the secretarial support, but let the community lead. The summit met several times over a year or so, and an outcome of these broad-based discussions, bringing issues to the table, seeing things from different perspectives, was this idea that they were going to host a 2-day summit and bring the larger community in discussion with one another to really engage the community and understand the perspectives that people were coming from. Bring in students, definitely international, but also domestic students, to bring in their voice, learn, understand, and identify systemic issues that need to be addressed. And then, more importantly, think about bridge building. How do we build partnerships and collaborations within the community across different policy actors? And there was always an intent at the roundtable itself that the summit would eventually lead to building a charter on Brampton International Student best practices or experience. Sort of a commitment on the part of the community that something more was going to be done rather than just this talk, that there was going to be outcome and there was going to be responsibility and accountability in terms of their participation. So the summit was held mid-July. It was a 2-day summit. On the first day, the focus was really discussing various issues, bringing them to the table, seeing different perspectives. And on day 2, the focus was, okay, what are the solutions? What are the ways forward? What kinds of measures of accountability can we have? What are the plans of action? The summit was amazing in the sense that it included 259 delegates in person and 600 online participants. I supported the summit as a facilitator, and I was just absolutely impressed with the kinds of folks that came onto the summit and were very interested in participating. So just to give you an idea, of course, we had post-secondary sector and the private career colleges. We had students, international students, domestic students, but we had people from the community in the sense of community organizations, cultural community organizations, religious community organizations, the health sector, the settlement sector, civil servants, policymakers at all levels, employers, real estate agents, media people, landlords, city developers, the police and fire department, immigration, recruitment agents, employers. What you realize through this is the number of people whose lives are invested in, get influenced by, and are touched by basically international students within our communities. So all these folks matter in terms of the international student experience. And this was brilliant in terms of how much engagement and interest were shown by all of these community members. We did bring in facilitators from outside the Peel region, outside Ontario, outside Canada even, to participate in the summit. One important factor, we had the media there as well, in terms of a panel, in terms of their role. And it's very important that the media be engaged and their role be recognized in terms of the international student experience and their well-being. And I'll touch upon that towards the end. A couple of things we learned. I cannot highlight everything, but all of this information is available on the website. If you look at, just Google Sheridan College International Student Experience Summit, you will get details pre-summit, about the roundtable, about the summit, and now coming up the charter as well. So you'll get all of these details. I'm just highlighting a couple of components and hopefully get you excited about looking at this initiative. So about 5 things that I want to highlight for you. We learned that international students are sold stories that are not factual. They're not based in reality. They set false expectations. And we need to pay attention to what's going out by information, the kind of outreach we have, being responsible for how we invite international students into our communities. The second component that came through, we speak about the fact that the international student experience is unique, but what does that uniqueness really mean? How does it look? Why is it different? And really understanding the pressures on these students from their families, monetarily, sort of having a better insight into what we mean by and how do we recognize that uniqueness of the experience. The third component is the fact that we must recognize that international students are a vulnerable population. They're a population that gets influenced every day by their immigration status. We can offer a lot of services, but that doesn't mean they will necessarily approach them because they're always in a precarious situation when it comes to their status, when it comes to many situations. So we really have to think about their vulnerability before we approach various issues. Or offer any kinds of programs and services. The fourth component is the fact that we must recognize that they have intersectional identities. It's very easy for us to think of international students as one group, either very well off, they're coming from a specific community. No, they have intersectional identities. Gender is an issue that influences their experiences. Women particularly have different experiences and they are more vulnerable than male international students. And the fifth and final one is the fact that, given this policy context of education, the fact remains that a lot of international students, after they graduate, before they become PR residents or, seek jobs and get more support that way, they fall between the cracks because there isn't support available. So here again is a real disjuncture between our broader policy and what's operational in terms, of the support we're providing them. So, we had so many interesting conversations. I have something like 75 pages of notes from the summit. All in all, we were very thrilled that community members said that they really did not understand the complexity of the nature of this experience and the nature of the issues surrounding this experience. So that was very good. They came up, the community felt like there were so many resources within the community. There were so many well-wishers that people just weren't aware of what's available. And because of that, now they can think of new ways of partnering, new kinds of collaborations across different groups to build better services. And this idea that, we're in the collective and we have to work within a collective, the collective impact approach, if you will. That it really matters that we come together as a community, work collaboratively, not competitively, in meeting the objectives of the community. So that was very, very important in terms of sort of the outcome. As I mentioned, the charter is something that was always part and parcel, and people at the summit did come back saying, yes, now we're convinced we need a charter. And so our next steps right now, I have reviewed about 13 different charters, both in Ontario, in Canada, as well as internationally. And we have written a draft charter. It's unique. It's very unique because most of the charters I came across identify the post-secondary education sector as the only actor in this whole arena, or they're often written by governments and are very legislative in their focus. But this charter, is bold because, as I said, it recognizes the education nexus. It recognizes how that influences policy, relationships, and behaviors. It's community focused. It's not specific policy sector focused. It's not focused on any one actor. It's focused on thinking about the community, because this is the space and the place that hosts international students and has an interest in hosting and keeping those international students. And it's also a charter that recognizes that trends change. Geopolitics changes trends of international students. So how do we keep that future orientation always in mind? So right now, the charter, as I said, has been written. It is being workshopped, and the city of Brampton and Sheridan are seeking input in refining it, but it will be open and available to other community members. I just want to say again, if you go to the website, Sheridan College website, and you just type in International Student Experience Summit, you will get all these details. And the Sheridan College folks are more than happy to present a workshop, work with your community if there's an interest in discussing, thinking about how they began this initiative. And as I mentioned, they're more than happy to share their charter with you. So in closing, what would I want to say? Very exciting and interesting initiative. I hope it takes teeth and makes a difference. I think it will. There's a broad community engagement involved. The 4 or 5 things that I would highlight in conclusion. Number 1, the international student well-being perspective is what we need to focus on. It cannot be focused on the recruitment component or ensuring employability or one small component. It has to be more holistic in its approach. And the New Zealand charter is a very interesting one to look at, which does take the well-being approach. So thinking about international student well-being in a broader sense. Secondly, when we think about EDI, education, diversity, inclusion, whether in the post-secondary sector or in the broader community, we cannot think only within our borders. It has to be focused on students, international students, who we normally consider outside our borders as foreigners and international folks. They have to be part of our conversations and discussions on EDI. Number 3, we are so far away from understanding what it means to offer culturally responsive services, programs, and our approaches overall. There's so much we need to learn to make things more culturally appropriate. The 4th component, I would say, is engagement. We speak about the fact that we have students, we take student voice into consideration, but we don't touch the surface. We only touch the surface. We really need broader engagement in terms of students, in terms of the engagement all the way from policy to practice to establishing programs is very important. The last thing I would say is the media plays a big role in not only giving student voice, but ensuring the narratives of resilience, the positive narratives, the narratives that make a difference, the narratives that show where and what change needs to be made become important. So engaging the media is very key, and ensuring that we work with them on having narratives that are important for change, as part and parcel of our initiatives becomes key. So that's where I would end. I hope I have interested you enough in this initiative to go look at it, to consider it, and to really think about how within our communities, going back to this idea of where we are, our context, where we're situated, how we in our own little communities can start building these initiatives, start making the connections, start making that difference. And I think for post-secondary education, we talk about being members of our community, that really our role and place is for within the community, that we take this up very seriously in terms of thinking about much broader than our own post-secondary communities in terms of enhancing international student well-being. So I hope you found this somewhat interesting and useful, and more than happy to be in touch if you have any questions. Thank you very much again. Thanks BCCIE, and thanks Elizabeth. Thank you. Bye-bye.